Thomas Jeffrey Hanks, loved by millions of people for his portrayals of ordinary people achieving extraordinary feats. His movies are some of the most iconic, not just in Hollywood, but all around the world.
Well done! That day, for no particular reason, I decided to go for a little run.
Yet, despite all his fame and fortune, he still remains as one of the most humble and friendliest movie stars there is. In today's episode, we will attempt to go through the wonderful journey that is Tom Hanks' life and closely discuss these two movies, Big and Elvis. Each is made at a different stage of his career and go through the impacts that they have on each of us and others. I'm Darren.
And I'm Tim.
And this is MovieBeings.
Beings?
Just before we get into the episode, I want to give a bit of a shout out to Mr. Tom Hanks, right?
What did he do?
He's been in the industry for 40 plus years.
Not too long then.
And all his films have grossed around $5 billion.
Damn. Almost as much as Marvel, or?
No, but that $4.9 billion is only in North America.
Oh.
All around the world, it's about 9.9.
Damn. Well,
So
there you go.
So maybe 1/3 of the Marvel universe by himself.
Well, there you go. The Tom Hanks universe.
And that made him one of the top 5 highest gross earning actors of all time.
Well, you'd hope so.
Well, I want to give you a quiz. Who do you think are in the top 5?
Tom Cruise, is he up there?
No.
Oh, God, then I'm already off. Robert Downey Jr.?
Yes, he's in that, yes. He's actually number 2.
Scarlett Johansson?
She in that, yes.
I'm just trying to think of Marvel, because they've made most of the money.
Yes, she's number 3.
She's number 3. Oh, God, I'm trying to think who else.
Think of another. I'll give you a hint. Chris.
You mean Hemsworth?
No.
Not Hemsworth.
No, not Hemsworth.
I was going to say, I'm like, I don't think he would have.
The Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, Pratt.
Yes,
Was Pratt up
he's
there?
number
Oh my
5.
God.
He's number 5.
I guess he did do a lot of work.
Yes. Who do you think is the number 1 highest gross
Number
actors?
1. Oh my God.
Think this one.
This one, Pulp Fiction. His name is just Samuel Jackson. Yeah,
Samuel Jackson. He's the highest gross actor.
I was going to say, he's still doing 3 movies a year.
100%. So yes, he's definitely number 1. Yeah. So Tom Hanks is still number 5 after 40 years plus.
And no Marvel influence either. Are they all in Marvel stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go.
I mean, I'm surprised to not see Tom Hanks in the Marvel.
Well, there you go. Well, obviously he doesn't need it.
Okay, so that's the first introduction of Mr. Tom Hanks, I guess, influence on the movie world. But I want to see and hear about your first impression of the man.
I'm trying to even think what would have been the first movie I would have seen him. Probably a lot of people like Forrest Gump, which is it's like an interesting movie for people to see an actor in, because it's like I don't know how to even describe it, because it is a strange movie, but very humbling, very charming, of a man going through his journey, but because I can't remember what he suffers from exactly.
Yeah.
But just seeing because he is a bit more simpler, but he does achieve a lot.
Yeah.
Without being too manipulative or too controlling of people, And the famous line of life's like a box of chocolate.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
So
yes, I love that line.
And then even earlier than that, probably Toy Story as well, growing up with Toy Story, and even him being in that, probably not as a child realizing who he is, but because I always like him, and is it Tim Allen who does the other voice as well?
The voice acting, yeah.
So I always think they're a strange mix to be in, but yeah. Even without realizing, you probably don't realize that Tom Hanks has probably been in a movie you love. Even without even you realizing it, probably.
That's a good take. And I first saw him in Forrest Gump, just like a lot of people. And that movie really blew me away because of his genuine acting. Just going through some numbers here. So the movie had a budget of $55 million, which is a pretty decent budget.
Because when is it 80s or 90s? 90s?
No, it's in the 1994.
Okay.
It was released in 1994.
Yeah.
And it grossed $678 million.
Damn.
Worldwide.
It's kind of crazy because you think about that movie, you think it wouldn't, it seems like more of a critic movie, more than a box office success. So, because for that time in the 90s, that's a huge hit.
Huge.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to discuss about this movie is the character of Jenny. A lot of hate for her. A lot of hate for her. What do you think about her?
Well, I haven't watched the movie in a long time, so it's hard to like really grasp it again. But because people hate it because she kind of like uses him a lot, right? And kind of like keeps abandoning him and like moving on and like. I think she sells him like a lot of false promises, but like I said, I haven't watched that. I should have watched it again, but I was like, we're watching a bunch of other movies for this as well.
That's okay, and that's the idea, right? Because that movie has been around for so long.
But it's also another good movie, maybe to get its own episode as well. Like, it's probably a good movie to look into as well. But Jenny hate is real. I will say that.
I understand the hate for her, but in my opinions, I think she is a representation of Forrest's commitment for her, because in their own ways they are not perfect. Like you mentioned before, Forrest Gump has a condition. So his condition was he has a below average intelligence or IQ, but in his simple kind of way he has this idealistic view of Jenny, and he never gave that up. Despite all of her bad decisions. And at the end, she actually became the person that she believes her to be. And for her, and for me, that is super powerful and very admirable. Another thing that I like about this movie is just one of the characteristics by the Forrest Gump character. One of the lessons I still carry with me until this day is, regardless of your circumstance and your beginnings, if you put all your focus into one thing, you can achieve greatness. Yeah,
because it's also like him having a disability. It's like, people think he's less of him, even though he achieves, in this movie, he achieves quite a lot.
So many
more
things.
than most people would in their lives. So it's like, don't bring anyone down just because you think they're a bit, stupid or silly. Like, anybody can achieve anything if they really put their mind to it.
I agree. And my favorite achievement of him is just a ping pong champion.
I know. That's always great.
It's so random. Yeah. Awesome. So now we're going to get into the early life of Mr. Tom Hanks. So
was it 80s? He started 80s, right? Cause
So he started 80s, but I wanted to start from the beginning.
The beginning.
But, as we know, today Tom Hanks has 4 children. I think I'm just going to call him Hanks from now on.
Hanks,
Hanks has 4 children. He also has 3 grandkids.
Well, there you go.
And to some people, this might not mean much, but for Tom, I believe it carries a bit more weight considering his childhood. He was born on July 9th, 1956. To a very humble beginning. His mom was a hospital worker, and his dad, Amos Hanks, was a chef.
There you go.
A traveling chef.
Traveling chef.
A traveling chef.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, I think there's a company in Australia called Chef on the Run, so they do the same thing. So Chef on the Run.
So when they do a bad job, get out of there, before they figure it out.
I actually worked with one of them. It's like a casual chef, and they work on a very casual basis. So they would come to one place, they cook for that night, and then they would just move on.
Help filling in and stuff.
Yeah. Tom Hanks was one of the 4 children, and his parents actually got divorced in 1960 when he was only 5 years old.
Pretty young,
Yeah. And after the divorce, Tom and 2 of his older siblings stayed with his father, and the youngest stayed with their mother. So what interesting is after that divorce, his parents got remarried a few times.
God damn.
Yeah, his mother remarried 3 times.
Damn.
And his father remarried twice.
Damn.
And the stepmothers also brought their own children into the marriage.
So even more kids.
At one point, when he was about 10 years old, he had to move house 5 times, and he lived in 10 different houses. 10 different houses. And, as I mentioned, his family got so big that even his own father forgot about him.
God damn, that'd be rough.
That's rough, right? And he was referred to as number 8.
Number 8, oh my God.
So I want to hear your take on this. So
sounds pretty rough.
How do you think this would have shaped him as a person or as an actor?
Well, I wouldn't even, it's always hard to ask about someone's upbringing, because it's always hard. We were just after their generation essentially, because that was a lot of people had bigger families then. My mum and dad both come from bigger families, right? Not in the same sense of remarrying and bringing in other kids and stuff, but just from the point of they'll always have more than 5 kids. But then it's even bringing in other families from other people. That'd be rough to be here's new mum, here's new dad, here's a bunch of their kids. We got to try get along and stuff. And considering his acting style as well, he doesn't come off as like he feels wronged or feels like he's, you know, rough. He's not like playing those roles. He's usually like a very kind-hearted person, and he's very, it seems very honest from him.
Yeah.
It never feels too much of like he's acting into it too much. It does come from an like honest place.
And this is why I want to bring up his early life, because I considering his achievements now, the childhood makes it more commendable, because at such a young age, going through your parents' divorce and, you know, living in a big family, not knowing who you are and losing your identity.
Yeah, being called a number's rough.
Number 8 as well, like a black ball, number 8. And for me, it really it could have traumatized him in such a bad way. It would have been rough,
yeah.
Yeah. And during that time, he was trying to identify who he was and finding his own identity. And but that was not the end of his rough childhood. It turns out his father, Amos, when he was 9 years old, his father witnessed his grandfather got killed by a gangster.
Oh, damn.
And that traumatized his father. Not only that, after the murder, his father had to also testify in court 3 times.
Oh, right.
So he had to relive the story over and over again. And because of that, Tom Hanks never really blamed his father for the lack of trying or, you know, for the rough childhood that he had, because in his perspective, his father had gone through enough. And his father never had a good childhood to begin with. What do you think about this?
I think that's fair. Like, that's what I mean. Like I was talking about before, he does seem like an honest person, and he like understanding.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think it was fair. It could be fair to blame your father even if he has had a rough upbringing and stuff. It's just like, oh, you know, you can still try to like.
Yeah. And this reminds me of a story of a sailor and a captain. Have you heard of this story before on the boat? So there's a boat and they're traveling on a rough sea. One of the sailors got really panicked and he started screaming, and, you know, he wanted to get the boat to turn around. And the captain was very nervous because he doesn't want to get that attitude spread across all the sailors. So he asked someone to help. One guy stepped up and he said, "Captain, I can do something to help with this situation." What he did was he threw the other sailor overboard into the ocean. And then he just left it there for like 2 or 3 minutes. And the sailor got panicked and, you know, he started screaming under the water. They got him out of the water onto the boat, and then he stopped screaming on the boat. So the moral of the story is, like, when you think that you are in a bad situation, if you put your situation in a different perspective, sometimes your situation might already be better than another situation that you are in.
That's horrible. Think you don't like heights? Let me push you off this building. See how you like that? See, it was worse before. Yeah, well.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because it reminds me of that story that Tom Hanks never blames his father because he sees his father's situation prior. And that's why I was trying to get
would be
at.
hard to understand as a child as well. Like,
yeah. And because of that, you know, in one of the interviews that he had, he mentioned that because of the lack of adult supervision, he had to learn how to take care of himself when he was quite young. And he had to do a lot of trials and errors. He told a story when he was trying to make a soup, and then it nearly burned the house down.
God damn, that's impressive.
But now we got to the part where he found the acting calling. So, you know, he had always been a fan of the cinema, and he often visited the cinema alone by himself, just watching movies by himself. And he also tried out different things like tracks, soccer, and even church youth group. But you know, and all he wanted to do was getting out of the house, understandably.
Fair enough.
Then one day he saw one of his friends acting as Dracula in one of the school plays, and then that got him hooked.
He's like, I could do better than that.
Yes, and you know, like in high school and then in college as well, he joined a lot of play clubs and he started acting, and he auditioned quite a lot. You know, for me, it feels like the play of his friend is like fate. What is your take on this? You know,
that's what a lot of people do, right? They say it's fate because this is like, you know, shined out to them as a moment, which I think is fair. Like, you never know what it is until it's like right in front of you. But I think that's fair. Like, especially when you're coming from like a rough upbringing, it's like, oh, here's a way out. Here's something that I can enjoy and maybe turn into something, which is always tough. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's great. And during his college years, he met up with Vincent Dowling, the head of the Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah, good old
and
Cleveland.
His coach told him something that would really stuck with him. Working in theaters is more fun than fun.
Well, there you go.
And he brought that kind of approach with him along the way. And because he worked in very different positions in that theater company, he quickly learned that a very important factor of being an actor is you have to be nice with everybody, even though you dislike them.
I was going to say, I don't know if many actors follow that.
Yeah. And for him, he said something like, especially when you dislike or disagree with someone, you still need to respect their process, and that's how you get the job done. And I was going to ask you about this approach. You mentioned that not many young actors these days follow this approach.
Well, I wouldn't even say young, because I feel like there's, I'm sure you heard about the Christian Bale like incident where he like screams at some people, and I feel like there are some other actors that are just like, I do it my way, don't like mess with me, kind of attitude, which is like, you know, no matter what you've been through, it's like it takes more than one person to make a film, right?
Agree.
Which I think it's fair to be like, I can understand that angle of like trying to get along with everyone, but it's also like when someone's being hard, it's like, come on, we're all here doing it together, right? But I think that's fair. Like, that's what I mean. You don't want to make it rougher than it already is, right?
Yes, I mean, with that approach, you know, he got get along with a lot of people in the industry, and so in 1979 he moved to New York City, New York, and then he had his movie debut in a low budget slasher movie called He Knows You're Alone.
Oh damn!
In the 1980. Which was a commercial success for MGM, grossing nearly $5 million.
What was the budget? Like $5?
Probably like 100,000.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been good old slasher films.
And he also appeared in several television shows. And you know, one of the co-producers, when he saw Tom Hanks on the set, he said something along the line of like, "I don't think he's going to be on television long. I think he's going to become a movie star pretty soon."
Well, there you go. He called it.
He called it. And, you know, after that, he had a few guest appearances here and there. But his big break was the movie Splash.
Splash, yeah.
When he acted with a mermaid, or, you know, like...
As a mermaid or with a mermaid?
An actual mermaid.
An actual one? Oh, damn.
But the story of how he got cast in this movie was quite funny because of the guest appearances that he had in a TV show called Happy Days. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know Happy Days. Yeah.
Because of this, he met the writers of Splash.
Well, there you go.
And then he also met up with Ron Howard, who turns out to be the director of the movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean, Ron Howard. I'm sure they've worked together a lot now as well, haven't they?
I think he worked with Ron Howard for like 5 movies now. But what I'm saying is, because of his approach, you know, he gets along well with everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he gets
especially with
movie.
directors and stuff. I think they want to be people that they can direct a bit more, or even like willing to work together. Like they don't want to be people that are hard and like, you know, you want to get your vision across. And if someone's like, no, I'm doing it my way, it's like, well, why are you here?
In 1987, well, you know, like he landed the first role in 1984, right? And this movie became a surprise box office hit, grossing more than nearly $70 million.
I'm sure it had another small budget as well, right?
Yeah, it's like the budget is around like $5 or $10 million.
Well, there you go.
But then in 1987, he signed an agreement with the Walt Disney Studios.
Oh no.
You know, like how that turned out.
Yeah, I was going to say, because usually they never work out super well. Signing a contract, they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you all this money, and they really just usually they abuse it.
And I think the contract has something to do, like he has to do a bunch of movies for them. As
we're talking about Elvis later, similar issues, right?
Yeah. Yes. But also in 1987, he had his first divorce.
Oh, no.
As well. So he met his first wife when he was studying theater at California State University in Sacramento. His wife was 26 and he was 22 at the time. His wife was Samantha Lewis. So she was an actress.
Okay.
She was a quite successful actress, and she's a very nice person. And they ended up having 2 children together.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, but what do you think about this situation here?
Not much to comment on, is it really? Like, it is what it is. Sometimes it's how life is. Like, you know.
What do you think the effect of the divorce had on him at this stage?
Not that I've ever talked to him, so I wouldn't know what it would have done to him. I'm sure in some way he might have thought about how his childhood was and maybe it affected him in that way. But sometimes it can be good just a divorce. Like when it happened to him, it's always hard when there's like a lot of kids involved. Like 2's still, a lot, but it's still like, you always think, you don't want to take it out too much on the kids. But sometimes divorce is the better option for it.
And that definitely on the money there because of that divorce, a few things happened to him. So one, he got depressed. He went through a very long period of depression, not because of the divorce, but because being a child of divorce himself, he felt that he had failed his children. So he had to go through therapies 3 times a week during that time. Also, during that time, he also turned down a very big role. I'm not sure if you heard of this story.
No.
Harry Burns, when Harry met Sally.
Oh, right. Oh, that is a big... Well, there you go.
So he was offered this role. And the funny thing here is he turned down the role because he said he couldn't relate to the character. The character, Harry Burns, was also going through a divorce, but Harry Burns was brokenhearted. Yeah. For his case, he was happy because of the divorce. He believed that the divorce of him and his wife was a good decision for both parties. That's why he couldn't relate to the character. And that movie, on a budget of $16 million, went on to gross $93 million.
Is that Billy Crystal?
Billy Crystal got the role in the end, and then it became a cult classic with Meg Ryan.
That's what I was trying to think. Is that like the big lift off of Billy Crystal as well? Like if he didn't get that role, maybe he wouldn't have been as big as he was.
And his wife now, Rita Wilson, said that if Tom Hanks had agreed to that role, he would be a much bigger star now.
Well, I don't know if he could be any bigger. I was like, he's got huge. Tons of classics and huge movies. Like if we're looking back and he was like maybe he had his moment in like maybe the 80s and then he like died off or something, but he's still acting today. It's not like it's affected him at all. Yeah. So, through the therapies, he brought up something that I really want to discuss with you. He said that, life is not going to go the way that you want. And before you can build a better one, sometimes the life that had to break apart. What do you think about this sentiment? I think that's fair. Like, you never know how life's going to go. Sometimes it can go better or it can go worse than what you think. It's just like how you roll with it. Like that's the thing. Like when he's gone through his divorce, going through therapy and stuff, trying to help like push through it because always going to deal with the heartache and maybe the unfairness of life, and it's like trying to push through that or find a way to go through it rather than holding you down too much, which can happen quite a lot. Like it's never easy to get past something that like emotionally scars you or damages you. So it's always hard to like look past that, but obviously with Tom Hanks it worked out all right, I think.
This is also something interesting that I want to discuss as well, like considering all of the upbringings that he had along of the childhood traumas, he decided to have an optimistic approach to life. And for me that is super rare. Because if you are products of your circumstances, it's very easy for you to be like,
just buy into it. Yeah, exactly. I feel like I would say a more majority of people would kind of buy into that rather than trying to be optimistic about your outcome, even if something bad and terrible happens to you, trying to like push past it. It's always tough. Yeah. So you don't blame them too much for their attitude, but it's like, it's always when you find someone like Tom Hanks that can like push past it and be like, there's going to be something better on the way rather than like dwelling on what bad's happened to me. Like you said, if you burn down the house making soup, so move on. If you can move on from that, I think you're all right.
And in 1998, it marked an amazing return for him. So this is the year that he met and married his now wife, Rita Wilson.
That's what I was going to say. They've been together a very long time.
And from one of the interview, he said that Rita Wilson is also from a very big family, but also a very stable family. So she's successful musician. And at this point in his life, he finally saw what an actual family kind of looks like. Yeah. And he realized, this is what he's been missing. Yeah. So they had another 2 children with each other, and then they're still married until this day.
Which is still very rare for Hollywood as well.
Very rare. And now, that marked a big return for his career as well, because 1998 was the year that the big movie.
Well, there we go. It all comes to it.
Yes, the fantasy comedy was released, written by Gary Ross and Anne Spielberg. Does his name ring any bell?
No, I haven't heard of that guy before. Mustn't be anyone that important, right?
Yeah. So Anne Spielberg is actually Steven Spielberg's sister.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yes. And it was directed by Penny Marshall, a female director. So on a budget of $18 million, it grossed $151 million worldwide. And at that time, it was the first movie directed by a female director to gross more than $100 million.
Well, there you go.
There are a lot of interesting things about this movie. But you want to go through like the story of the movie?
It is pretty simple. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's always funny with how long it is. It is literally like a boy that's just like, I hate being a child.
Yes.
When is he 12 or
He's 12, yeah, he's 12.
He's like, oh, I always found he goes to the fair and he sees a girl that he's like.
Yes.
And then he's trying to like build up confidence and go with her. And she's like, I'm here with my boyfriend. He can drive. And he's like tall or something. And he's just like, oh, because then later he tries to get on the ride and he's too short to get on. So he's not tall enough. And I'm like, he's literally two excuses for wanting to become an adult. I was like, I'm not tall and I can't drive. I'm like, mate, you're 12. I thought, damn, it feels like he's having a midlife crisis at 12.
Yes. And I mean, that's the basic concept of the movie, right? Like you want to become an adult. It's a coming of age movie. This is a classic storyline.
Yeah.
And like he made a wish to a machine, which was unplugged, by the way.
Yeah.
And it has some sort of magical element to the story. And
I'm still surprised because the wish was I want to be big, right?
It can mean a lot of things, right?
Because like it could literally have just made him a big child. Like he could have just been a big dude, like a big child, rather than like actually like becoming an adult.
Yes. But after he became an adult, he went through a whole series of
that first scene is crazy when he's like trying to hide from his mother, and then his mother finally sees him and as an adult, and she's like, "What the hell are you doing in the house?" He's like, "Oh, I'm your son." He's like, "No, you're not."
Understandably, I mean,
I think that's
I would do
fair.
the same thing as well. But his relationship with his best friend Billy in this movie is very fun as well. Okay, this might be a controversial take. He also has a romantic relationship.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know how to feel about it either. I was like, this is really weird.
Yes, and I don't think that detail would hold up in today's standard.
Probably not, because he's 12. He's literally 12-year-old. I think he's 30. He turns to a 30-year-old.
30-year-old man.
And
yes.
the woman that he like works with, because he works in like a toy factory. He ends up getting a job at a toy factory and testing out toys. And they're like, oh, wow, you're doing a good job. I wonder how you understand the perspective of a child. I wonder why. And I do like that aspect because it's kind of funny that he's like, the child understands better than like the adults do who are trying to make toys. And it's like, they would like this. Like, why would a kid want to play with a building? And I'm like, yeah, that's fair.
That's fair. And I think he also gave the ideas of the Transformers. The dinosaurs, the birds.
Well, the Beetle Morphs that I refer to them as, because I remember, I think it was the 90s. Beetle Morphs are like the Power Rangers, but bugs.
Nice.
Yeah, it is kind of weird that, so this lady it's like, oh, he's not like a normal man, because she feels like, oh, all these dudes are like, her current boyfriend, I guess, he's a bit of an arsehole and he's a bit up himself. He's only worried about like money and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's like a bit fresh and like he's not worried about what normal people are scared or worried about because he's a child. The first interaction when he's like eating the caviar and he's just like acts like a child, like, I don't like this, like spits it out. I'm like, wouldn't you get that? I feel like a normal person wouldn't just do that. But yeah, the relationship's a weird one because it's like, because I'm like, I couldn't remember if they slept together. And then I'm like, oh, they do. So they're like, technically slept with a child.
Yes.
And it was always like, that's... Because it could have been a bit better if they like never went to that kind of level maybe. But then again, it's just like, but it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it could have been still all right if they didn't like put that part in.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't like show it, but I think it insinuates that they do like sleep together. Because when he brings her back to his place and they're like, she's thinking they're going to sleep together. And he's like, oh, no, let's play some games. Let's go on the trampoline and stuff. And she's like, oh. But yeah, I do think it is a weird aspect because I don't think the overall relationship is bad, but it's just like him dealing with like the adult side of it. I don't think that was like very fair. Like I know she doesn't get it. She doesn't understand he's a child. And he doesn't. He's like, oh, this, you know, this is working out well for me. But it's just like, I don't know. It is a weird thing to like look over in retrospect.
And I think this is one of the things that this movie did really well. Like it hits that sweet spot of balance. So a lot of the critics believe that this movie is not a really message central kind of movie. It doesn't really hit on any messages like, the core message is like, just hold on to that child within. And that's about it. And it doesn't really hammer on any other themes, even though it kind of touches on a few interesting points.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's got magic, it's got romance, it's got life lessons, etc. And it doesn't really, you know, dive too deep into like any controversial topics.
Because, romance is probably most of the heart, like the second half of this movie is like dealing with that.
Yeah.
Like there are stuff there, but I do kind of agree they don't delve into it as well as they could.
Yeah.
But then they could have also been a movie in itself, right?
Yeah.
Like, because it is a fairly long movie still. Like it isn't like a short movie and they missed opportunities. It was just like whatever they focused on, which was more his interaction as a child with like many adults and stuff. And so that was more of like, how does that play out?
Yeah.
Where most like are like, oh, why don't you do it this way? It's like, why would I? I don't like to do that. Why should I do that? That's kind of like the attitude through the whole thing.
And, you know, but Tom Hanks' performance in this is super charming.
Yeah.
And, you know, he really embodies the fact that he's a 30-year-old man with a mind of a 12-year-old. And his performance in this movie got his first nomination for the Oscars for the Best Actor.
Which is crazy to think.
Yeah.
For like a child movie.
Yes.
Which is kind of weird. Like you never see that. But he does do a very good job.
Yeah. Interestingly, this movie was inspired by an Italian movie called The Grande.
Is it a Starbucks movie?
Yeah, and Gary Ross and Anne Spielberg developed the story within an hour. And then later, they sold the script to somebody that we already talked about, Mr. James L. Brooks, in the 20th Century Fox.
It all comes back around, doesn't it?
Yeah. The more that I delve into the movie world, it seems like everything is connected.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the pre-production of this movie because I think it's quite interesting. Steven Spielberg was asked to direct this movie at the beginning. And do you know who he recommended to play Josh in the beginning?
Who did he recommend?
Harrison Ford.
Well, there you go.
Han Solo to play Josh Baskin.
I don't know if he would have. I don't know if that's a Harrison Ford role when you really think about it.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you know, he's like the grizzled man, action hero kind of dude.
Yes.
So it would have been weird. It would have been very weird thinking of that Harrison Ford doing that.
And Steven Spielberg ended up not directing this movie due to scheduling conflicts because he was directing Empire of the Sun. With John Malkovich at the time. But he later said that he did that on purpose because he didn't want to take the credit of his sister.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah. So Tom Hanks was initially offered the role, but he was doing two other movies at the time, Dragnet and Punchline, which was moderately successful, but he couldn't do the movie in the beginning. And because of that, the studio had to consider a lot of different actors for the role. You know, Harrison Ford was one of them. And Harrison Ford, he was just coming off his 1977 Star Wars, 1978 Apocalypse Now, The Empire Strikes Back in 1980.
Yeah, so he's like at the pinnacle of like his stardom now, right?
Yeah, and he was also in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Blade Runner.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's like in his pinnacle, you know. I would argue that's like the pinnacle of his like movies.
Yeah. So, and I think probably that's why he didn't want to play a child.
Yeah, well, that's what it doesn't suit him. It doesn't, like at that point, because like he's like the grizzled superstar at that point. It's like imagine like Tom Cruise or something doing that at like his peak. Yeah. It's just like, that's a bit weird.
I will also name dropped a few names that were considered or even offered the roles. Kevin Costner was offered a role. You know, like he was coming off The Untouchables.
Yeah.
Dennis Quaid was also offered a role, and they all turned it down for some reason.
I wonder why.
Matthew Modine, who played Private Joker in Full Metal Jacket, he was also offered a role, and he also turned it down.
Like, it is a strange role. I do think it's like one of those things. You're like, you have to be a child for most of this.
Yeah. Jeff Bridges.
That would have been funny.
He was considered. He wasn't offered a role.
Okay.
But the director, Penny Marshall, said that he was not suitable for the role. Sean Penn was also considered.
Sean Penn, oh wow.
But then Sean Penn was considered too young to play a 30-year-old man with a 12-year-old mind. Gary Busey.
Oh, Gary Busey, that would have been a completely different.
He was
different
too
Busey.
old for the role.
I was gonna say, I'm like, imagine Gary Busey. That would have been hilarious, honestly.
Andy Garcia.
Oh, Andy Garcia as well.
He also acted in The Untouchables before this movie, but he read for the role of Josh. The studio executives didn't want him because he asked for $18 million as a payroll.
Because how much was the budget for this movie?
55.
Well, there you go. So nearly half the budget, or close to, would have gone to that.
Yeah. So he didn't get a role.
Yeah, I could imagine.
John Travolta wanted to play this role.
Really? Oh my gosh.
But the director didn't want to play him because during this time he had a string of unsuccessful box office movies, and the studio didn't want to associate themselves with him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like.
Funny enough, in 1985, he was offered a role of Alan Bauer in Splash.
Well, there you go.
And he turned it down.
Well, there you go. Maybe if you did that movie, they would have considered it.
Yeah, talking about like being nice to everyone in the movie industry. One of the director's friend, Deborah Winger, she also wanted to play Josh, but she tried to convince the director to rewrite the role as the woman.
Okay.
And
could have still been an interesting take because it's still like a. Why? Why not?
Imagine a 12-year-old girl turn into a 30-year-old woman.
No.
And have a
you
relationship.
Seen Suddenly, was it 13 to 30? What is it? Suddenly 30 with Jennifer Gardner?
Yeah, 30 to 30. Yeah.
And that did all right.
Yes.
I can't remember if she sleeps with anybody, but
she didn't.
Mark Ruffalo's in that.
Yes. But this is the reason why they didn't want to,
I still think they shouldn't have done it with a boy. He shouldn't have slept with a woman. But that's what I mean. That's the one thing I would say about this movie that's like, well, they probably should have taken that part out.
Speaking of controversial, right? Like, can you imagine a 12-year-old girl having a relationship with a 30-year-old man?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, there's always the double standard because it's like from the boy's point of view, it's like, oh, look, I'm having sex. It's like, it's great. It doesn't matter if they're older, but it's still not a good thing.
Yeah,
it doesn't. That's what I mean. Yeah. So it's like, because there are other movies that delve into the other things where like, you know, the young boy gets with like an older woman where it's like, it's not any better.
No. So luckily they didn't change the script to that.
It would have been rough for that. Yeah.
And the last big names I want to drop is Robert De Niro. So he, before this movie, he portrayed Al Capone in The Untouchables.
That would have been a perfect role for him.
So he wanted to play the kid, right? And he got so close to playing this role in the movie that he accepted the role. Damn. He hung out with Jared Rustin, the guy who played Billy, Josh's best friend. Yeah. They went skateboarding, they played basketball together. And at the end, Robert De Niro asked for $6 million as a payment.
So not like as much, but they're probably still like, this is probably too much for us.
But the studio was like, nah, this is too much. Penny Marshall wanted him to be in this movie so badly, she offered to pay him from her salary.
Oh my God.
And he still turned it down.
Well, I'm sure she couldn't have offered him that much. Like she probably wouldn't have. Honestly, I'm surprised they turned that down. Like that probably would have been bigger than Tom Hanks. Like,
yeah, I'm very surprised that. But the thing is, a lot of people, they think that casting Robert De Niro is a bad casting anyway.
I think it might have been, but I'm surprised. Like just for his name to be on it.
Yeah.
Like out of all the other names that we've already listed off, I feel like he would probably be a better shot at like capturing it, maybe. Yeah. But it's always like you said, after coming off like some of the roles he's been in, it's always like hard for the viewer to be like, wasn't he like a hard ass and now he's a child? Like,
yes.
But it would have been, I think it would have been interesting.
Interesting, right? And he wanted to do this movie because he wanted to do more friendly stuff,
which is fair as well.
He even did screen testing with Elizabeth Perkins. So they did a testing screen together. And in one of the interviews, the actress said that acting with him is like a horror movie. It feels like a horror movie rather than a child movie.
Yeah. He's a bit more scary and daunting, but that's just probably because from what he's done, right?
Yeah. And it's funny that, you know, after that he didn't do the movie and Tom Hanks became available. So Tom Hanks agreed to do the movie with $2 million.
Damn.
And sorry, I think I made a mistake just then. The budget of this movie was $18 million. So Andy Garcia was asking for the whole budget.
He wanted the whole budget. It's like, mate, we can't pay you that. There's no movie without it.
After that, the movie became a cult classic. And the movie was really bright and things like that. But the core message here that we want to bring up again is we should stay in touch with the child within us. What do you think about this core message?
I think it's a good one, especially for like, from the perspective of like a child growing up and then like realizing like, oh, you know, you kind of lose it along the way, and like maybe to keep some of that fun and like, you know, wonder to things rather than being so like cynical or on point. It's like, oh, it's all about the money. It's all about, you know, making ends meet, you know. Sometimes you can have a little bit of like, it can be just a bit fun. It can be a bit stupid. It doesn't always have to be, you know, serious. Yeah. Which I think it's a good message because like Tom Hanks does an amazing job of like showing that, because at the point, there's like a point later in the movie where he's like becoming a more adult. Yeah. Which I found surprising because I can't remember how long this can't be more than a month or something. Yeah. And he's already like turned into like an adult. Yes. And he's losing that like kind of what made him special, like being like a child as an adult. And that's like when his friend Billy's like, you're meant to like stop. It was like 2 weeks or something. And they're like, we'll figure this out. And he like kept going a bit longer because of like, you know, having the romance and then like enjoying his job and like having projects he was working on, and then like finally realizing, it's like, oh no, maybe I need to grow up normally, like instead of skipping 18 years or whatever it would have been, which I think is good. It's just like there's a lot of growing to do, and like jumping through that in like a month or two would be, I couldn't imagine how that would feel.
Like, you're skipping 18 years of your life.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, you know, like Tom Hanks has gone through in his life, like a lot of ups and downs, like figuring it out for yourself and learning those lessons. Like that's a lot to miss out on, which is like fair for him to like go back and like try to do it properly. Yeah. And I think nowadays, like, I think we're kind of going through that, right? Because when we are younger, we always want to become a bit older so that we have more privileges. Yeah, but then we didn't realize more freedom. Yes. But then freedom and privileges comes with responsibilities as well. Yeah. Bloody taxes.
Bloody jobs, bills, all those things.
All those things.
After this movie, around this time, Tom Hanks also want to extend himself out of the romantic and comedy roles. Because before this, he'd been in a few different movies. And because of the contract that he had with Disney, he had to be in a lot of movies, right?
That's what I mean. He had to be in those movies.
So after Big, he had quite a few box office underperformances. Before he got to the golden era, the 90s. This is where he got like a string of cult classics. So I would try to go through this biography quickly, okay? So 92, A League of Their Own. Yeah. 93, Sleepless in Seattle. Yeah. 1993, he also acted in Philadelphia.
Well, there you go.
Have you seen Philadelphia?
I don't think I've seen it, but like I know of it.
Yeah. So for this one, he won his first Oscar for Best Actor.
Well, there you go.
And 1994, Forrest Gump.
Well, there you go.
Which won him the second Oscar. So he was the second actor.
Was that the next year? That's the next year. So there you go.
So he was one of the two actors who won 2 consecutive Oscars for Best Actors.
Very rare.
1995, Apollo 13.
Yeah, that as well. Damn.
Oh, damn. In this movie, he starred alongside Kevin Bacon, Bill Paxton, and Ed Harris.
Well, there you
go. Ed Harris got a few nominations for Best Supporting Actor from this. This movie was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, winning 2 for Best Editing and Best Sounds. Grossing $355 million on a budget of $52.
Houston, we have a problem.
Later, 1995, he started in the first Toy Story.
Well, there you go. The real big hit.
Guess how much it grossed? $365 million on a budget of $30 million.
Damn.
It's crazy. 1996, he debuted his first directing movie, That Thing You Do, in which he played a producer of a music company called Playtone. After the movie, he formed that company in real life.
Well, there you go.
It's still running to this day. After that, he co-wrote and co-directed a few HBO documentary series. 1998, he teamed up with Steven Spielberg for Saving Private Ryan.
Never ends.
The budget, $70 million. Box office, $482. The movie got Steven Spielberg's second Oscar for Best Director. And he got another nomination for Best Actor for this movie. 1998, again, he joined Meg Ryan in You Got Mail, which I think is not a hit. 1999, he was in The Green Mile.
Oh, well, there you go. Even that movie's insane as well.
Insane. Starring late Michael Clark Duncan, who is such a great actor, but we lost him too soon. And then he returned as Captain Woody in Toy Story 2.
The next big hit.
Yeah, that is just like in the 90s.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Can you imagine that? Like
Yeah, I
within
know.
that short period of time.
Quite a run.
Quite a run. In the 2000s, Castaway.
Castaway, the next big one.
2001, he produced Band of Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, he's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
And did you know this? He was also part of the DC universe.
Oh, no.
When he starred in The Road to Perdition in the same year. This movie was inspired by DC comic books.
Okay.
And was produced by Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox. Same year, he was with Leonardo DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. Yeah. He also produced Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, yeah. Is that an Australian movie? I can't remember. Or maybe I'm thinking of Ursula? Is Ursula's Wedding? Maybe I'm thinking of another one.
Yeah.
But that was a big hit.
Yeah. In 2004, he was in 3 movies. The Lady Killers, which was a flop. The Terminal, which was a flop. And The Polar Express, which was the first movie that he was in the mocap suit.
Yeah, I remember that movie.
What do you think about
I remember watching that as a kid and being like, what is this?
No, it wasn't a successful movie. 2006, Da Vinci Code.
Did I watch that in the movies? I do remember it being huge.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I think the books were just like huge at that point. And
yeah,
just
Dan
like,
Brown was big at that time.
Yeah, and we got to jump on this essentially.
Because
I have watched it like somewhat recently. I think they're fine.
Yeah.
It's just all about that like intrigue and mystery, and it's like trying to pull you through to like the end.
But people don't think that Tom Hanks was a good casting choice for Robert Langdon.
I think he's fine. Like, you never know who could have been better, but he's definitely in it because of his name, right?
Yes, but people think that Tom Hanks is not tall enough. It's not fit enough.
How tall is he like a tall buff dude in the books?
Yes, he was the tall swimmer.
Do they need Arnie?
Arnie Schwarzenegger goes,
I'll be back.
Before the end of the year 2000s, he also produced Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a hit, I think.
Yeah.
Then we got to the year 2010s. He kept quite busy. 2010, he was in Toy Story 3. 2011, he starred with Julia Roberts in Larry Crow, which was a big flop.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I remember that movie.
Yeah. I think it might be one of those movies, like just the names of the actors.
Yeah, hopefully to draw them in,
but
and then
the
it's not
movie was
really there.
bad.
Yeah.
Then he picked it up in 2013 when he played Captain Phillips.
Yeah, I know that one, yeah.
It's great. Saving Mr. Banks, where he played Walt Disney himself.
I don't know if I watched that. That doesn't sound like a movie I would have liked.
I mean, he was still under contract with Walt Disney.
Damn, that's how long ago, so right.
Yeah. In the same year, he made his Broadway debut.
Broadway, damn.
To play in the Lucky Guy, a play written by Nora Ephron. 2015, he appeared in a music video, I Really Like You by Carly Rae Jepsen.
Oh, God.
He lip-synced the whole song.
Well, there you go. What, he didn't write it or sing it?
What do you think about this career choice?
Why not? You know, he's obviously successful. It doesn't like matter.
Yeah.
If they're like, if you like some music and they're just like, hey, you would mind jumping on this? Yeah, sure.
Out of all the songs that he could have chosen.
He probably likes it. You never know what someone likes, right?
And after that, he reunited with Steven Spielberg in Bridge of Spies.
I don't think I ever watched that one.
But I don't think that movie was a success. 2019, he came back as Woody in Toy Story 4.
I think that's the one I haven't watched. I remember watching 3. I don't remember watching 4.
Yeah. Well, I think 4 was a good one because now Andy is all grown up.
Okay.
Yeah. And now they had to move to a different owner.
Yeah. Switch perspectives.
Yes. Late in 2019, he starred in A Beautiful Day as Fred Rogers, as Mr. Rogers.
Oh, right. I haven't seen that. Was that a TV series or movie?
It's a TV series.
Yeah, because I do remember it, but I never watched it.
I watched a few episodes.
Yeah.
So it turns out the host, Mr. Rogers, was dealing with a lot of controversial topics. I think during the time he was talking about like racial separations. Yeah. And it was good. And then we got to 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemics. He wrote and starred in Greyhound, a TV released by Apple TV.
Okay. That was like the prime. This is what like in streaming's like hit its prime. They're like, we get any actor into something, right? Yeah.
That movie, I watched a few bits of it. It was really heavily CG.
Yeah, well, if it's through COVID,
Yeah.
that's kind of like what they had to do.
Yeah. In 2021, he starred in a science fiction drama Finch, which was also released by Apple
Well,
TV.
there you go.
Yeah.
Never heard of that.
And we got to 2022. The movie that we will discuss now is Elvis. So he starred as Colonel Tom Parker. Apparently, this movie was filmed in Queensland, Australia.
Yeah. The director, why have I forgotten his name? He's done I think he is an Australian, but he does a lot of filming. A lot of his. I've got
Laz Berman.
Berman. Yeah, he's done a few.
Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann.
Because he's done a few movies in Australia now. I think because he lives here now. But that's what I was always... when I saw it, I'm like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense for like the guy that plays Elvis. He's an Australian actor as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of other actors you see in this are like local Australians. That's why I was like, oh, it's always fun to see that.
Yeah.
But like, it's a very interesting role. Like, he's like probably very far from like where he was at the beginning of like being like kind of joyful comedy actor. And in this, he's like very far away from being like playing essentially the villain.
Yes.
And I don't know how I felt about he's kind of like the narrator for most of the movie, which I thought was like an interesting choice of saying he is like essentially through the villain's eyes of how what happens with Elvis and how he kind of like goes through that stuff. Because it is like, I know a little bit of like Elvis's story, but not to like the extent of like what it really is or how bad it was. But it's like, it's pretty rough. Like watching the whole movie, I was like, God damn.
And the critics are not happy with the casting of Tom Hanks for Colonel Tom Parker as well, because they believe that Tom Hanks is buried under the character because he has a lot of prosthetics. You know, he has to put on the weight suit to make him look a bit more like the character. And the direction that they were going for is, okay, so this is the villain, but we want to make him likable and relatable somehow.
That's
so we're
what I
get
was
Tom Hanks
seeing.
to play him.
That's why I think they went with Tom Hanks, and that's why they went with the perspective. Because even at the start, like it's at when he's dying, and it's kind of, I'm like, I don't know if people would want to like think that the guy that pretty much screwed over Elvis is like a good dude, where it was like Elvis had tried many times to kind of like get out underneath him, but it never worked. Every time the Colonel had a plan to like get him back in.
Yes.
So it was like, that's why I was always thought, I'm like, it's like an interesting choice, but it is very hard for a character like that like screws over maybe the most popular person to ever live.
Yeah.
In Elvis.
Yeah.
And especially the end scene where it's like the final time Elvis performs when he's like on the piano and singing, like how brutal that is.
Yeah.
And even scenes before that, he's like, we'll do anything to get him up on stage because he only cares about himself.
Yeah.
And about how he's like, he's got to do this for the casino so he can like get his money and make sure it all goes in. So it's like, it's hard to show him as a good, like understand his perspective when he's clearly abusing Elvis to get what he wants.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is a rough, like I do think Tom Hanks does do a good job, but I do think they needed a better perspective or a better narrator, or even not having him as a narrator would have been fine.
Yeah. And I think the direction that they were going for, I kind of understand. But the thing here is, because of the casting choice, it makes their direction not as clear. Let's say if you want to have a story being told from the villain's point of view, make him a villain. Don't make him likable. Don't make him.
Because in this movie, it's not even about being likable. He's trying to like show his viewpoint. He's trying to make you understand why this all happened and that it needed to happen when it was clearly like it was for his own good. He wasn't doing it to help Elvis.
Correct.
It was to manipulate Elvis into doing what he wanted so he could get out of his debt or make more money.
Yeah.
So it was never like him. There was no point in the movie where I'm like, oh, it was fair that he did that.
Yeah.
Like he was literally just there to use him for his own ends.
Yeah. Did you hate Tom Parker in this movie?
I guess so, because it's just like everyone loves. It's so hard when you've got, like I said, he's still probably one of the most famous people to ever live, Elvis. And it's like, how can you, turn your perspective on him? Like Elvis had his flaws, no doubt. Like he wasn't a perfect person. I don't think anyone is. But would have we had a different Elvis if he wasn't wasn't the guy that let him, like, if he got out early and did his own thing, could have we had a different Elvis?
100%. And, that what if question is always on a lot of people's minds, right? Like, during that time, Elvis was mismanaged. He was taken advantage of, and he was sold away in the casino just so that his manager could get more money to gamble.
And even get rid of his debt.
Yes.
And that's what I mean. And it's just like, it's horrible to see. Like, no.
Yeah. But then I'm pretty sure a lot of people are kind of happy with the consequence that Colonel Tom Parker faced in the end, in real life.
Yeah.
He gambled away his fortune.
He failed anyway. Yeah. Without Elvis, he went downhill. But
I think this is why a lot of people feel bad for Elvis.
And I think the estate, Elvis's estate sued him, right?
Yes.
To get back what they took from him, which I don't know if you'd ever get it back, but there was some justice there.
Yeah.
Which is why I found it weird to have him as like the narrator, right?
Yeah.
Like we're rooting against him the whole movie.
Yes.
We don't want him to succeed.
Yes.
So it's like a weird, that's what I always thought. That's why I like Baz Luhrmann always does movies in that kind of way. I feel like he's trying to like his own little spin, but because I do think it is like an interesting movie, but it doesn't hit the high quality that it could have. Like even like they say if Tom Hanks, they didn't cast him and had someone else there, like maybe someone that's better in a villain role. I don't think it would have mattered. I still think Tom Hanks does a good role as the Colonel. Yeah. Like from his point of view, from him, he's like playing that well. I feel that like the Colonel feels that he is doing the right thing for him, and that I do think Tom Hanks portrays that quite well.
Yeah,
but I do think him narrating like most of the movie until like I think the last like 10 minutes where it kind of moves away from him a little bit, but it's just like it does miss a little bit. Like I think it's good, but it's like there was so much more potential for it to be like a great movie. And
it's hard as well because in reality, Tom Parker was the person who was closest to Elvis in a way.
Which is sad, Like that's what I mean. He knew everything and he knew how to kind of control him.
Yeah.
And that was the thing at the end.
Yeah. But this movie was another success for Tom Hanks, grossing over $288 million worldwide on a $85 budget. And it received 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Actor and Best Picture. This is interesting because after this movie was released, the Presley family private screening of this movie prior to its release, and they believe that this movie was made really well, and they believe that the movie depicted their father and husband really truthfully, and Austin Butler was phenomenal in this movie.
I do think he was,
and he had to compete with a few other actors before he could get the role.
I could imagine trying to play Elvis. It was kind of like the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, trying to portray his name is just Mercury. Yeah. Because I remember watching that. Like, I love Queen's music. That's why it's like, it's fun to see it. But even that movie is a bit I think it's worse than this movie. But it's just like, it's hard when it's like a figure that's so loved. It's so hard to like, you want it to get it right. Because I do think how Elvis was portrayed in this movie is good. That's why I feel like it's a bit of a miss. The way they kind of went about it. Yeah.
How would you suggest that they change the perspective of that?
I think they just go with Elvis instead. Like, I do understand from like, because at the start it goes from the Colonel and then he like shows how he's running things and then he finds Elvis and it's like, oh, I can just use him because he's more popular. You know, he's going to get all the attention and make more money for me. More than like getting out, like just do it from Elvis's perspective instead maybe. But
yeah. Then it would become like another biography movie.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like there are, because that's what's weird. Like because I do like that aspect that sometimes they do use actual Elvis's footage, which I do like. But that's the thing as well. Like that kind of makes it more biopic-y, more than a movie about him. Which is why it's always hard to do it with characters, people that are so loved. It's like, how do you do it that without like, you know, making it too biopic-y? Because especially when the story's so interesting without playing up anything, right?
Yeah.
Because usually movies are like, oh, you're trying to exaggerate on facts or maybe mess with stuff to make it more interesting, but it's already all there. Yeah. It's the same thing with like Freddie Mercury. He's got all the intrigue and stuff's already there without messing with it. But
I guess like they didn't want to make another documentary, right? They wanted to make like a feature film.
I think that's why they went with that different perspective, because it's like, oh, this is probably something no one's ever really done. Yeah. But it's also like, it makes it tough for maybe the audience to be like, oh, you made like one of the worst guys
Yeah, to be the
perspective.
hero.
Yeah,
to be the
not
hero.
even that he's the hero, but
Like,
from his perspective, it's
yeah.
hard to be like, well, we don't really like his perspective and things.
So after this movie was released, it was received positively by Lisa Marie Presley, so the little girl that appeared in the movie, and also Priscilla Presley. So they really liked the movie, and they supported Austin Butler in the 80th Golden Globe Awards, and he won the Golden Globe.
Yeah.
But tragically, so the Golden Globe Award was on January 10th, 2023. 2 days later, Lisa Marie passed away.
Oh, that's sad.
Because of bowel obstruction. So it's interesting because from all the things that we have talked about so far, it seems like it reminds me of the saying like life kind of imitates art, and then vice versa, art imitates life. So if Tom Hanks' life is a life full of challenges and traumas, it might have brought that into the movie as well. Like you never know. Why did we choose Elvis? Because
it's one of the newer films.
Yes, and this is a very bold move from Tom Hanks'
It's
career.
a very contrast from his normal roles.
Yeah, a lot of people think that it's harder for him to break out of the mold that he has spent 40 plus years to build.
I don't think it's like we can bring up other actors that like play who they are, like a Ryan Reynolds or like a Will Smith or The Rock. People that are just like, they're playing who they are.
Yeah.
And it's not really, if you're casting these people, that's who they're playing. But I think Tom Hanks I wouldn't see him as that. Like, there is like his aspect and like what he does really well. But I do think he can still do well in those roles outside of maybe his comfort zone. Because like in this movie, I do think in Elvis, he is still good.
Yeah.
And does show a lot.
Yeah.
But like, I think it is like an audience perception as well. Like it's hard to lose sight of what Tom Hanks usually is, which I think is another thing that's hard for actors as well. It's like, it's hard to see them away because I was talking about like The Rock, the other side, like Dave Bautista. He doesn't want to be in that kind of, he does Drax and he didn't want to be remembered as Drax. He's shown in other movies. I do think he's a good actor. Yeah. That he can be not the big dude. Kind of like, The Rock does. He's just like, I'm just going to be the big hero dude and that's all I'm doing.
And you're going to change from the movies for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That reminds me of like the Jumanji movies when he called his character Dr. Bravestone. I mean, like, why come up with a different name when your name is already cool?
Yeah, I know.
One of the reasons why I picked this movie is because I think in terms of Tom Hanks' perspective, he had spent the last 40 years build up this nice guy persona, and even when he played the bad guys, like in The Road to Perdition where he played a gangster, he still had that kind of core values to himself. Like he does the wrong things but for the good reasons. But in this movie, it's a completely
it is
at
very
one totem pole. Like he's a completely bad person.
Yeah,
did it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, there's nothing here you can be like, oh, I can understand why I did that. It's like, no, he did it for himself.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he never tried to help anybody but himself.
And I think this is a bold move for Tom Hanks because at the end of the day, how quickly Hollywood moves.
But I don't think it's not so bold for him because I feel like he's just like he's set. Like it's not, it's not fighting for his career or anything. It's just like, I feel like it'd probably be for him just to do something different. Because it's just like, you think of people like other people that have been in the business, like say like a Tom Cruise, where he's still doing Mission Impossible movies. Yeah. And I don't know if he'll ever do anything like this. Yeah. Like play out of his range. Yeah. Like he does, another Maverick movie and it's just like, oh, I'm still the same dude. When how old is he now? 105 or whatever? He lives forever with Scientology 65. Or whatever. But that's what I mean. He's like a similar dude. He does he'll play the same roles. I don't think he'll very much likely adventure outside of that. Where that's like Tom Hanks, you can see he's like, oh, I'm willing to try that. He could have easily been like, oh, I don't think people are going to like me as that guy. But he's willing to do that.
Yeah. And what I was thinking is because, yes, he doesn't need to prove anything at the moment, but I think he also needs to prove to himself as well because, Hollywood is moving very quickly. There are new upcoming actors every day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think
it goes through pretty quickly.
I guess if you really like the art form and you want to stay in it, then you need to keep your relevance.
And also another thing as well, like actors aren't as big as they used to be.
Interesting.
It used to be like we were saying before, like you have two big actors in it, people will go to see it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true anymore. I think there are names that people are like, oh, usually I trust their acting chops and their abilities to shoot good movies. But I feel like it's very rare to be like, oh, Tom Hanks is in this? I'll go see this. I think that's very rare now.
Yeah. And even less for his names now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you see him, you're probably like, oh, he's going to be good. Like you trust him enough that it's like, oh, he's going to be good in it anyway. But like I don't think that's going to pull in. Like it's like, oh, if it's a $50 million movie, it's like it's not like he's going to make $1 billion
right?
just because Tom Hanks is in it, right?
Just like The Rock. I think The Rock is one of those movie
He's one of those
now,
guys,
right?
but I wouldn't see him just because The Rock's in it. I'm not going to. I'd literally be like, I'm not watching this movie because The Rock's in it.
Yeah. So before we wrap up the episode, I want to bring up another interesting point about Elvis movie as well. This movie, even though it was a commercially success, it went through production hell.
I could imagine because it's like just still in COVID era, kind of really.
So it began filming in January 2020.
Yeah, so
just
it's like
before COVID.
Just before COVID. That's what I was going to say. It's like you can see it a bit, but that's what I mean. It's tough.
Yeah, and Tom Hanks got tested positive for COVID in March, so 2 months into the production, and the production resumed in September. So the last 6 months of the production.
I think I remember that in the news somewhere.
Yeah,
I do remember seeing like Tom Hanks has got COVID.
He took a photo with his wife.
Yeah, in the hotel room or something. I remember that. Yeah, see, it all comes back to me eventually.
Awesome.
I'm not drinking enough. I remember things.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything else before we wrap up this episode?
No, I don't think so. I'll just I think Tom Hanks is a pretty amazing actor. There's so many movies we could have talked about, so many things we could have touched on. Like we could have touched on Forrest Gump or, Castaway, some of those big movies, or even like his whole era from the 90s. You could have chose any of those movies.
Correct.
And even like some of his later movies, they're still like, they're still quite good. So, hopefully he keeps going at his own pace and not like Samuel L. Jackson has to be in every movie that he's given.
No wonder his haggis grows.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right?
Makes so much money.
Like Tom Hanks' span, like we said, he's been in like a lot of kids movies for us, like for me, like Toy Story, and then like a lot of older people now because I remember him in like Big and stuff for their childhood and stuff. So it's like he's transcended so many generations. Yeah. So it's always good to see like whether or not he need to keep acting at all, right? Like
no, he doesn't need to.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing. Like now he's involved in so many other aspects of the film industry. So he produced, he wrote, and he directed a few things, and now he's in Broadway. It's not like I think he's at a position of his life where he doesn't need to prove to anyone anything, and now he just does the things that he really wants to. Yeah, exactly. Which is great. But hopefully, I think. He needs to be aware of his health as well because now he's getting up there.
Well, that's what I was going to say. How Samuel Jackson's just as old as he is, I think.
Yeah.
And like we say, Tom Cruise, he's still jumping off buildings and breaking his legs, hanging off the side of helicopters. I think you go as long as you feel happy because I think it's just like if you're still enjoying doing it, I think that's the big thing probably. I'd assume for Tom Hanks. I assume he still enjoys it.
Well said. So we have reached the end of this episode. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button if you haven't. And, thank you so much for watching. I'm Darren.
And I'm Tim.
And this has been Movie Beings.